Welcome back to another Couch GM Live podcast. Today I'm joined by, of course, Will with the In the Trenches podcast, part of the Couch GM Network. So first off, Will, thanks for taking the time and talking NFL draft with me.
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me on. I can't wait until I'll get to host you over on my channel here pretty soon. We're getting those subs up. If you are watching this and you haven't gotten a chance to go over there and subscribe, make sure that you do that. We're coming out with some very good content, I'd say. But dude, I love it. I love the NFL draft. I can't wait to talk about all the ins and outs and maybe even find some sleepers, some future Tom Brady-esque stars in the late round that we could break down.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're watching this, make sure to check out In the Trenches across social medias. He's posting lots of short form content and then also on YouTube for the long form. Wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for the podcast, Black Label Supplements. Make sure to check out blacklabelsupplements.com. Use code CouchGM for 15% off your order. Will actually was using he did a little trial. He did a weight test before he started the creatine, and then he did the creatine for 30 days and did that test again. Also, I think I saw him outside in the city, like pulling some city buses around. So it seems like it worked pretty well for you.
Dude, I'll tell you what, it's one of the more impressive things because right now, not to toot my own horn, but the last month or so, I've been really working on a nice cut. And so I've been able to cut down. I'm actually 10 pounds down. I'm almost in the 230s for the first time since probably like 14 years old, maybe 14, 15 years old. But at the same time, with the Black Label stuff, I've been able to keep my PRs. In fact, some of them are going up. I think yesterday I moved from a Toyota Camry to now I'm working on the Tacoma. Maybe a Tundra will get pushed here pretty soon. That being said, though, I do have to give a quick PSA. If you try the Blue Raz pre-workout, the pre-hustle, you will become instantly addicted. You will not be able to use any other pre-workout. It tastes so freaking good, dude. I got it on
right
Saturday.
now, actually.
I'm not gonna lie. I got it on Saturday. I drank like 3 already. It's Sunday. I'm drinking it all the time. It's like I gotta chill out. It's just so good. So I wish a great appreciation to Black Label. They've been fantastic.
Absolutely. So now getting into the NFL draft, I watched the first round and we expected a decent amount of quarterbacks to be moved early on and throughout the draft. 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. That's the fastest that 6 quarterbacks have been taken in NFL history. It ties the record for the first round, I believe. Walk me through, your reaction. We expected Caleb Williams to go to the Bears. We expected like Drake May to go to the Patriots potentially, and some of those other guys. But then Penix goes off the board of the Falcons and McCarthy and Bo Nix. And so walk me through your initial reactions.
Well, so I feel like we all kind of knew for the most part, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, that's going to be your 1-2, right? From what everyone's saying, the Bears love Williams. Jaden Daniels has moved into that second slot after going out and having a fantastic year, winning the Heisman. But then the Patriots, it felt like maybe there was a chance that they would trade out. Maybe they would move. I actually love this landing spot for Drake May. Drake May's issues and what made him have his like struggles, his weaknesses, he has a hard time identifying like where the mic is and doing a lot of the pre-snap stuff. He has a real hard time. Hey, the defense is giving me this look. I need to audible. I need to give a wide receiver a hot route so we can attack this. He's struggling figuring that out. And that's not uncommon. Like this isn't like a Drake May is dumb type of thing. It's the way that offenses are kind of run now. In the air raid system, you're not asked to identify a mic. Hell, depending on the system, you're not asked to identify a coverage. It's just who's the open guy and throw it to them. That's why the air raid has moved into the college football lexicon and why it's been such a big deal the last 10 to 15 years is because you didn't need a brainiac at quarterback. You could take anyone who had a good arm, who had good vision, and make them into a good quarterback, right? So a lot of these quarterbacks aren't taught those things. Well, Drake May gets to go to New England. He gets to sit behind Jacoby Brissett for a year, and he gets to learn. And Brissett's the perfect guy to learn from because Brissett's he's not an NFL starter. He's an NFL stopgap guy. He's either going to be the best backup or he's going to be the worst starter. So he knows what his role is for his career, and he knows how to keep his career long. And that's by building up the next guy. And that's what he's going to have to do. This is a great spot for Drake May, I think. Now, that's not saying that he can reach his potential, because his potential is about as high as everyone's except for Caleb Williams. He can now learn behind Brissett and reach where he wants to. It felt like a foregone conclusion that Arizona was going to go get Marvin Harrison Jr. They already have their quarterback in Kyler Murray. Let's build around him. Let's get the most pro-ready wide receiver in the draft. Shoot, some people are saying he's the most pro-ready player in general. And then at 5 is kind of where the draft started, because were the Chargers going to trade? Were they going to move out? What were they going to do there? I loved what Harbaugh said when they picked Joe Alt. Joe Alt, he's the number 1 offensive lineman going into this draft. And he said, look, I could have drafted Rome Odunze. I could have drafted Neighbors. I view offensive linemen as weapons. I don't need to draft one of these wide receivers as weapons that everyone else says they're a weapon. This is my weapon, and I'm going to build this team through the trenches, just like he did in San Francisco, just like he did at Michigan. And I love this pick by the Chargers. And then the Michael Penix, dude, the Michael Penix pick is crazy. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
Because if you were going to say, hey, you know what? We're worried about Kirk Cousins. He's going to be 36 next year. He's coming off an Achilles tear. We're worried about how he's going to perform. Will he be Kirk Cousins of old? Well, then you don't pay him $180 million for 4 years, and you don't give him $100 million guaranteed. You would never do that. Or if you were going to do that and you said, hey, we wanted to get a young quarterback to build, behind him, hey, learn from Kirk for a year or two. If Kirk doesn't work out, then we're going to give you an extra, 2 to 3 years. You're going to get your time to build up, learn how to be a pro. You should have went with JJ McCarthy, because JJ McCarthy is 21, going to be 22 next year. JJ McCarthy's young. He has time to grow. Penix is 24. He'll be 25 next season. So let's say that Kirk Cousins gives you 2 years and then retires, or 2 years and then, hey, it's Michael Penix's turn. He's 27. He's making rookie mistakes that most people are making at 21, at 27. Now, I'm not saying that Michael Penix shouldn't be a top 10 pick, right? If you don't worry about the injury issues, then he should be a top 10 pick. But he should be a starter right now because of how old he is. He has to go through those growing pains, or else he's going through those growing pains in the years that should be his prime, and years where he could be going through those growing pains to be ready to go by the time he's a prime. He is sitting on the bench waiting. It's just a ridiculous move. It doesn't make any sense. There's no logical conclusion that I can go with.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but rookie contracts are 5 years, right?
So it's 4 with a 5th-year option for first rounders. So Penix is really, really cheap. And then if they want to give him the 5th-year extension, then he becomes expensive.
So for that entire Kirk Cousins contract, that's all of Penix's rookie contract, and then there's that option for the 5th year.
Right. Right.
And it's funny because it's like the scenario in which Michael Penix is actually playing on the Falcons is when there's an injury with Kirk Cousins. And you're taking the most injury-prone quarterback that there was. And I'm curious from your perspective, if his high, risk of injury, if his ceiling is worth the risk of injury compared to taking a McCarthy or compared to taking a Bo Nix, is he really that much better than those other guys with his ceiling?
Yes. Yes and no. So this is the true, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? There is one camp of people, and this is kind of where I find myself more in. Once you start getting hurt, you don't just stop getting hurt for the most part. Unless you're Kevin Love, who couldn't get up and down the floor at UCLA, drops 30 pounds, and then all of a sudden he's one of the best big men in the NBA, end up winning a title. That doesn't happen very often. And it's not like Michael Penix's things were he was running and then there's a freak thing, like a lightning bolt hit him. He had some bad injuries, 2 to his shoulders, 2 to his knees. And so you saw he can run a real fast 40. He ran a 4.5, I think. But you don't see him running around too often in the games because he knows that he can get banged up. I mean, shoot, he got touched up twice this year. He got touched up in the first Oregon game, and he got touched up in the Michigan national championship game. And in both of those games, he's holding his ribs and he's sore and he's hurt. And so to me, that would bring fear into my eyes. That's something where I'd be a little bit nervous, and that would definitely be a knock against him and why I would lean more towards a Bo Nix or a JJ McCarthy. Now, in the camp where, hey, injuries are just part of the game, sometimes you have bad injury luck, you let it go, that camp, then Michael Penix is that guy. Shoot, you can make the argument that Michael Penix should have been the third guy taken off the board. Like, his only knock is that Caleb Williams is younger than him. Jaden Daniels isn't younger than him, but the wiggle that he has in the +1 run game, his ability to move and run is going to help him a lot early on in his career for Jaden Daniels, because there are going to be times where, hey, my first two reads aren't open. I can tuck it and run, where some of the guys who aren't as mobile, Michael Penix, might just have to throw that ball away, and now that's a wasted play. So if you do believe that Michael Penix is the guy, which clearly Atlanta does, and clearly Atlanta fell in love with him after watching his workouts, that's completely fine. What I don't get is, if you're going to decide Michael Penix is our guy, we're going to fall in love with him, you should have never given the money to Kirk Cousins. You should have went and grabbed Russell Wilson, or you should have went and grabbed Sam Darnold or Gardner Minshew or one of these other, Jacoby Brissett. You should have grabbed one of these other guys. And then, hey, you're going to sit for half the year, and then Penix gets to start. It just seems like, well, it just seems like bad timing. It doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't make sense to anybody. And it's a really bold move, because best case scenario, I think, for Atlanta and for their GM is that Kirk Cousins really isn't that good, but Michael Penix hits the ground running and dominates. And so then you have him for super cheap and you can use it to build around him. But at that same token, you're still the team that gave $100 million to Kirk Cousins guaranteed.
Real quick, Reflect the Sun says Falcons are probably surprised that he was still there. He figures the Falcons can always trade Cousins to a team who ends up with a QB injury. I'm curious. I don't know the facts or the details. Do you know if there's like no trade clauses in his contract? Is that a common thing in NFL like it is in baseball?
No, I don't believe he has a no trade clause. Kirk has weird contracts. Like, Kirk has sneaky made a lot of money, because up until this contract and his rookie contract, everything was guaranteed. So he'd take less money or less years to get a fully guaranteed contract, as opposed to some other quarterbacks that would, like Patrick Mahomes. When his deal came out, everyone was like, oh my God, it's it's a $500 million. He's going to make $500 million. It's like, no, he's going to make $500 million if he leads the league in passing, touchdowns, he wins the Super Bowl, wins MVP, wins Super Bowl MVP, and he does it all 10 years. If he hits that mark for 10 straight years, he's going to make $500 million. Kirk doesn't have that. And that's totally a possibility for them to be able to trade Kirk Cousins to somebody else. The problem is, you're still going to have to probably eat a lot of that dead cap money. And you're really banking on what, 5 to 8 teams that could have an injury. Now, after last year, like, I'm not going to say that couldn't happen, but even for a team like the Jets, where they were poised to win and win right then and there, because they have such a small window because they're using Rodgers so late in his career, they wouldn't even trade for somebody, right? Minnesota, same thing. Kirk Cousins goes down, he gets hurt. They didn't trade for somebody. So there is totally that possibility, and it could happen, but it's almost at this point like you bought the brand new car and you drove it off the lot, and after a month you're like, this car sucks, I want to get a new car. The price value that you paid for it when you first bought it, you're not going to be able to sell it back for that.
Right. Now, getting away from the quarterbacks, but back to the draft, I'm curious in that first round, which picks you thought might be sleepers, or, teams got a good pick with. And then also I want to hear the Seahawks, drafted Byron Murphy II, and listening to John Snyder talking about drafting him. They didn't expect to be able to get him at 16, but he ended up still being there. So what are your thoughts on those?
So I really like the Rome Odunze pick, and I know he's not really a sleeper. Like, Will, you can't say a top 10 pick is a sleeper guy, but why I like the Rome Odunze pick is because what Poles has done now in Chicago is he is given the best environment for a rookie quarterback, a first-year quarterback, ever, right? So normally when you're the number 1 overall pick, you have nothing around you. Well, you've got DJ Moore, 1,000-yard receiver, that Caleb Williams can throw to. You have Keenan Allen, multiple-time Pro Bowler. I believe he's even been an All-Pro. You have a wide receiver in Rome Odunze that can play inside. He can play outside. He's big, strong, fast, and physical. And most years, he's the number one wide receiver off the board. This year, he's the third, but he's still a top 10 pick. Oh, by the way, they've been working out together for the last couple months. I love that for him. And then in a safety net, you've got Kmet at tight end, and that defense has been building. I don't love Eberflus there, but the defense has gotten better year after year after year. I love what they've done there in just building a cocoon around Caleb Williams that's going to allow him the best possible chance to succeed. I mean, you can see what happened with Carolina last year, where there was no safety net for Bryce Young. And Bryce Young, like, he might not be the guy, but he also wasn't given that fair of a shot at it, really. You know, like, look at Houston. CJ Stroud, obviously, he's that dude. He's going to be a future, I mean, shoot, he's probably already a star now, but he'll be a future superstar. It wouldn't shock me if he won an MVP. He probably is going to get a chance to win a title or two. But when you look at that team, they had these good receivers around him, and he had tight end targets and a running game that he was able to use and kind of help him, you know, work through some of those rookie growing pains. Some other players that I like, I got to give a shout out because it is offensive line. I really like Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. That dude is a freaking road grader. He was the 14th pick to the New Orleans Saints. He's a right tackle. You can move him to left. They've had some issues with his Ramczyk, I believe is how you pronounce that name. He's been aging out at right tackle. You can let Fuaga come in, and he is going to maul people. He's an old school offensive lineman where he wants to run block. He wants to get his big mitts and big paws on people and throw them into the ground. I really love that pick. And then, of course, you have to love Xavier Worthy going to Kansas City. What was the big thing that they were missing this last year is they were missing that deep threat over the top that could also catch, right? Like Hardman was having issues catching the ball this last year. Sky Moore before he got hurt. And then I'm drawing a blank on his name, the Florida cat, Tony, Kadarius Toney. He obviously couldn't catch a lick. And then whenever they needed a big play from him, he struggled. Well, if Rice is able to continue to progress the way that he has, if Kelsey can hold on for another year or two of being one of the top 5 tight ends in the league, because we've obviously started to see a slight regression in what he can do because, you know, he's on the wrong side of 30. Can Worthy come in? Can he be that next threat? When were they at their best? When they had a guy who could go deep and who could be in the slot, who could be on the outside. That's a guy that Worthy could be. So I really do love that pick for them.
Yeah, and a couple of responses to those picks. So first off, the Bears. Also, they have DeAndre Swift. I mean, that offense is going to be insane.
Great pass catching running back out of the backfield. Great pass catching running back.
Insane. Like everyone's basically they'd be a starter on every team across the board in those positions. And then the Texans. It always boggles my mind how much turnover and how different teams look year over year in the NFL. You know, they had CJ Stroud have that standout year last year. Then they get Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs. Like that Texans team is going to be insane and really fun to watch also. And then you started speaking of the linemen. I was listening to, you know, their stats being called when they were drafted. Joe Alt, 6'9", 320. The guy that you mentioned from the Saints is 6'6", 320, like 6'8", 320. Like these guys are insane.
They're road graders. Well, I'm like Alt's freaky. Alt's freaky because he's been playing O-line for 3 years. He picked up offensive line at Notre Dame. In the new age of what you need at that left tackle and right tackle position, what teams are doing is they're finding kids who are 6'6" to 6'8", 6'9", who played basketball or played tight end in high school, and they say, we are going to move you to tackle. Shoot, even some guys like Seattle with George Fant, they moved him. He was a basketball player and a tight end in college. So they're like, you're going to go play left tackle for us. And not everyone works out and ends up being, you know, the greatest offensive lineman of all time. But I would bet money that Joe Alt in a Harbaugh system, he's going to be able to figure it out and perform well. And the film that you watch with him at Notre Dame, I mean, most of their games, they're going up against, you know, ACC top level competition. They went against Ohio State. And he got to go against Ohio State twice in his career. He's going up against premier pass rushers, guys who are taken early in this draft, guys who will be taken early in next draft with the JT kid. I just have to shout him out because he's an Eastside Catholic guy. So he's a Washington kid, born and bred. But he's going up against those top tier talent, and he's able to perform, and he's doing it after 3 years of learning the position. It's very, very impressive. These offensive linemen nowadays, I don't know if there's been a bigger evolution in a specific position or a position group as a whole as there has been in offensive linemen in the last 10 to 15 years. You look at the old school offensive linemen compared to the new school. Used to be O linemen. We were never big and like fat, but it was like big, strong, physical, plotting. Like they were strong and fast and physical, but they weren't light on their feet. They didn't move like basketball players because you didn't have to. Well, now that you're having to go up against defensive ends that are running 4.4s and 4.5s that can bench press 500 pounds and have 7-foot wingspans, but are 6'1", so they're underneath you the whole time. You have to be able to move. You have to be long. You have to be someone that's difficult to get around. And it's incredible to see the improvements and the growth in that position group over the last 10 years. It's nuts.
That's insane. Yeah. And then the Seahawks pick at 16. What do you think of him?
I really, really like Byron Murphy. I think John Schneider's actually telling the truth. Like, I think that they wanted to trade back. You didn't have a second round pick. Trade back at 16, and then you can go out at 16. Trade back at 16. Get a later first round pick and get a second round pick. I think that's what he wanted to do. But when you have a run where the first 14 players that are taken are all offensive players, and you have a shot at basically, they knew once the Colts were on the clock, you're either going to get Latu, you're going to get Byron Murphy, or you're going to get Dallas Turner. One of those three guys is going to fall to you. Those three guys most years are top 10 picks. You have to stay there and take that person, especially with Murphy. Murphy, everyone's comparing him to Justin Madubuike. Well, guess who that guy played for last year? He played for Mike McDonald, and the dude was an absolute animal. He had 13 sacks from a defensive tackle position. You don't see that. The only people that you see putting up numbers like that is Aaron Donald. Oh, by the way, that's the other guy they compare this dude to. When you can get pressure up the freaking middle, it scares quarterbacks. It makes them more likely to throw the ball quicker or not on time, not on target. And it just wreaks havoc. If you're a zone team and you're getting pressure up the middle, you can't run the football as effectively. If you're a gap scheme team and you have a defensive lineman that can get underneath the double teams and he can split them, it completely blows up the play. That's what Byron Murphy is. And Seattle's had good defensive tackles. Jaron Reed's a good defensive tackle. Poona Ford was a good defensive tackle. But they haven't had a defensive tackle that wins double teams at the rate that he does and is able to get into the backfield at the timing and the speed that he can get there. He's almost like having an edge rusher, but you have him at the 3 tech. And then he also fits in what McDonald wants to do. If you're going into a pass rush situation, put him one-on-one against the center, put him at the nose guard position. Now he's going up against typically the weakest pass blocking offensive lineman, and he can get back into the backfield. If teams are having to double team him, well, that means Mafe and Taylor and all the other guys that you have on the edge, now they're one-on-one. Or they leave him one-on-one up the middle. He can create havoc that way. If you want to go big, he can play the 3. Shoot, he can play the defensive end if you get into the goal line. Line him up on the outside and just let him go. I love this pick, and I felt like it was a statement pick from McDonald. It was, we're going to build in the trenches, and we're going to dominate those. We're going to dominate on the offensive line and the defensive line side of the ball. We are going to dominate those wars. And that way, even if we're having a bad game from Geno, even if you're having a bad game from your corners, from your safeties, you can still get to the quarterback and make life easier for everyone on the back end. I love the pick.
And then their second pick, which is the 3rd round, they took, again, a lineman, offensive guard, Christian Haynes. Mm-hmm. What do you know about Haynes?
So the reason they went with Haynes is physical, right? They wanted to make sure that they went out and they got a kid at that guard, which you were already you're a little weak at, right? You knew you had to go out and get a guard. Everyone thought that you might go and get Fa'utanu from UW because you could bounce him into guard, and then if you need to bounce him out to tackle because like Lucas got hurt or Cross got hurt, that would work. The thing that I really like with Haynes is that he's physical and he's strong and he's going to bully people. That's something that I feel like Seattle's offensive line has kind of missed since like the J.R. Sweezy days. Sometimes when you have an offensive lineman, it's okay that you got a 15-yard penalty for a personal foul because they were defending a player. Like, I'm tired of seeing DK Metcalf have to be your enforcer. It should be a guy like Christian Haynes. It should be, a guy like Charles Cross, like Abraham Lucas. Like, let those guys be strong and physical in there. And again, this is why I said same thing with the Byron Murphy. It's a statement pick. It's a position group in the offensive line and the defensive line, specifically interior on both sides, that you've kind of used as we have to spend money elsewhere so we don't get the opportunity to spend money on the inside on these guys. And McDonald said, we're not doing that anymore. We're building our strengths in the trenches, in the interior. When Seattle was its best, now it's because you didn't have to pay Russell Wilson much, but you had the best offensive line in the NFL, and you had the best defensive line in the NFL, and you had defensive linemen that could play a variety of different positions. I mean, Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett, they would play DN one play. Next play, one would be at nose, one would be at D tackle. Then the next play, they'd be on the same side of the ball, running twists, games, and stunts. You can't block guys like that. And that's what McDonald clearly wants to get back to. And I love that he made an emphasis on that of, we're going to find a position group or two position groups that have been kind of a weakness for us, and we're going to make them a strength, and we're going to make them a strength in the mold that I want. I want a physical, bruising, Harbaugh-esque offensive line, and I want a defensive line that can play a variety of positions that already have built-in leverage because they're a little bit shorter, but they still have that long arm. They can still use the moves that they need to get into the backfield and dominate. I really like the picks. I hope they both turn out. Like, I'm not up here saying it's guaranteed, boom, they're going to be home runs. Seattle did get A+ grades on their drafts. You just have to be careful on that because there's a really famous draft where you got an F. And that draft, you got Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, and Bruce Irving in your first three picks. And those guys were pretty good.
They turned out well.
Yeah, if Bruce Irving is like, man, that's the worst of the three, a guy who had 50 to 60 sacks in his career, played for 10 to 12 years. If that's the worst guy you got, I think you did pretty decent.
Yeah, right. What teams stand out to you as big winners or big losers in this draft?
I mean, the biggest winner to me is Chicago. You went from, even at the beginning of this year to kind of a laughing stock. I mean, I don't know if you saw it, but Odyssey in Chicago, it's like 670 the game or 670 the score. They did an interview with Rome Odunze. Like, Rome, do you think you can be our all-time career receiving yards leader? Rome's like, oh, I sure hope so. Like, who has it? Brandon Marshall? And they're like, no, some dude in the 50s. And he's like, how many yards do you have? 5,000? Rome's like, in a career? Like, what?
Wow. Yeah.
When you've been known for, people were making fun of Ryan Poles when he got the job. When you've been known for being a franchise that just can't figure it out, specifically offensively, like, you take away the sexy Rexy years with Rex Grossman, where even then you weren't that good. You just had one of the best defenses of all time for a year. And you had Devin Hester, who every other game, it seemed like, ran back a kick or a punt return. Other than that, they've been anemic and they haven't gotten done what they needed to get done. And you finally built an offense where you have three really, really good wide receivers. You have a top 15 to 12 tight end. You have DeAndre Swift, who is a quality running back in the NFL. You finally have an offense that looks like it can go, and you have a quarterback that has the most upside since Patrick Mahomes. That's got to feel really freaking good. And I know 3 years ago you were saying that about Justin Fields. Caleb Williams is a better prospect than Justin Fields. And I really believe in Caleb Williams. I love what he can do. He's the first Gen Z quarterback. So there's going to be things that he does that people don't get. He paints his nails. I don't get it, but that's what he does and he likes it. He's brash. He's not afraid, to show his emotions on his sleeve. You might have some rough parts. You're gonna. It just is what it is.
He'll be doing the TikTok dances.
Right. And when you surround him with that much talent, it's really, really hard to fail. And if he does fail, you kind of get a little bit of that leeway of like, everyone was going to take him anyway, so it's not really your fault. This isn't like you traded up to get Trubisky and then Mahomes got drafted behind and everyone was kind of like, why would you draft Trubisky in the moment? No one right now is being like, why would you draft Caleb Williams when Bo Nix was right there? Like it was a clear consensus Caleb Williams. So I can't say enough about Chicago. I'm really excited to see how they fall on their face. Like, I can't wait.
Did you see Caleb Williams texted the punter that was drafted out of Iowa saying, hey, you're not going to be punting here?
Yeah, like, don't get used to it, pal. I love it. I love that. That's fantastic. The other one I really, really loved too was the Chargers draft, because you went out and you got an offensive lineman. So now you have Rashawn Slater at left, who's awesome at left tackle. You've got Joe Alt at right, who's awesome at right tackle. You went out and you got Ladd McConkey. So now you're giving weapons to your quarterback as well. And then you go out and you get D tackles, linebackers. You get a couple other wide receivers that you can, take a risk on. If they hit, cool. If they don't, they don't. You build cornerbacks. Right. I know that Harbaugh can be weird, and I get that he's an odd duck. Like the fact that one of his heroes is SpongeBob. He thinks SpongeBob is a hero of his because SpongeBob comes into work excited every day, and that's what he wants his players to do. That's what he strives to be. He didn't eat chicken for like 30 or 40 years because he's like, it's a scared bird. It's afraid of things. And then he had like a weight room coach come in and a nutritionist, and they're like, hey, actually like the protein to calories ratio is like really good here. And you actually probably want your guys to eat that. And it's like, oh, okay, then yeah, actually that makes sense. So get guys stronger. I guess I do like chicken then. Like, okay, cool. Like the fact that you have him there and he knows how to build winners, and everywhere he's gone, he hasn't always gotten to the top, but he's been right there and he knows how to win. I think they made a smashing hire at head coach, and he went in right away and he went after 3 positions of need, made them bigger strengths for him and for the team. You got weapons at a bunch of different spots. I really liked that move as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that was another solid draft there. I saw the Detroit Lions got like a D+ grade from one of the sources that I was looking at. What teams do you think fell kind of flat on their face?
Well, the easy one is Atlanta. That's you can't make a big play at a quarterback and then make another big play at a rookie quarterback. You can't do that. It does sound like there's some smoke around the fact that teams were willing to trade up. Like there is a problem a little bit in media of like, well, he wasn't on the mock drafts. Well, every year there's someone that is sneaky up that we miss on. And it just seems like he happened to be that guy this year. The other one that I thought was interesting was there's some anger out of Green Bay. Jordan Morgan is a really good offensive tackle, and you needed an offensive tackle. The thing that I worry about with Morgan is he is coming off an ACL tear. That is something you'd had David Bakhtiari there for years. The minute he tore his ACL, he was the best tackle in football. The minute he tore his ACL, he was never the same. Montgomery obviously had a pretty good year last year, but is he the guy? Like, is he able to work his way through that? That's something that I find a little interesting. And then you also needed offensive guard help, and you never went out and addressed that. Like, you just went out and got Morgan, and then you went and you got Travis Glover out of Georgia State, but you didn't get him till the 6th round. You got him late in the 6th round. So do you bump him inside? Is that kind of the game plan there? That's an interesting one to me. I'm never going to hammer the Lions, mainly just because whatever Campbell seems to touch turns to gold. Like Jared Goff was done. We wrote that dude off 2 years ago. And now he's back to, hey, he's not an MVP, but he's most improved. He's probably a top 10 quarterback now. I really love the Tyrion Arnold pick. When you have Nick Saban just glowing about you, that's fantastic. Now you get to match him with his old safety from college and Brian Branch. Yeah, Arnold can play in the slot if Branch gets hurt, but it's better to have Branch in the slot, Arnold on the outside. He's big, he's long, he's fast. You went out and you got the Rackstraw kid out of Missouri. So you went cornerback, really build that up. I like that. The sneaky, interesting pick that they have is the kid out of British Columbia, Giovanni Manu. So he played Canadian college football. He's 6'8", 350 pounds. They went up and they got him in the 4th round. And a lot of people are going to say, hey, that's a reach. He's super raw and he hasn't gone up against, American football talent, right? That's not to knock on Canada, but it's just not the same. If this kid works out, because he ran a fast, and I mean fast 40, I want to say he was close to he was upper 30s vertical leap. He has some freak raw talent. If they can turn him into something, and then you're going to have on that offensive line, Penei Sewell, one of the best, if not the best offensive lineman in all of football already, and he's in year 2. You're now building up an offensive line that Campbell has clearly put time and effort in, and you're putting one of the biggest freaks of all time on that line. That's someone that I'm going to watch. He might not turn into anything. He's really, really raw. But if he turns into being 80% of what he could be, can you imagine a 6'8", 350-pound kid pulling out on the edge, running at corners, running at linebackers with the ability to where he's running a sub 540? Like he's cooking out there. That's a big kid. That's a fast kid.
One other thing that I saw during the draft, one of the graphics that they pulled up there was showing the Deshaun Watson trade and the Browns draft picks that they had given up. After this draft, they're finally able to move past the whole Deshaun Watson, and then they signed him to the contract. So it's like looking at where the Browns are at and what they could have gotten or what they gave up for Deshaun. It's just kind of mind-boggling to see.
Yeah. No, it's bad. That one is bad, and then the Bryce Young one is bad. The Bryce Young one, it's like Bryce Young for DJ Moore, Pro Bowl receiver.
Too, yeah. They would have had the first overall pick this year.
Yeah. So Bryce Young for DJ Moore, Caleb Williams. They still have a 2nd rounder to go. Darnell Wright, who's been a mainstay on their offensive line. And then there's one other cat who's in there that I just forgot about as well. Some of these trades are really, really bad looking at it in hindsight. I mean, shoot, the one that touches Seahawks fans the most, Russell Wilson. When you looked at that trade, everyone thought, oh my God, that's a horrible trade. You look back at it, Seattle won that trade. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how that one works out in the long run.
Any other big takeaways or thoughts from the draft?
No, I still need to dive into some of it more. It is fun seeing the Rams actually have a 1st round pick for the first time in ever. I think since the Jared Goff draft, this is their first pick. I'm really bummed they got Verse and Braden Fisk, 2 guys that I was really, really high on. In fact, there was a long time that if Seattle got stuck, because I thought Murphy and Turner and Latu would be gone, I wanted them to get Verse. I was really excited about Seattle getting Verse. He's so strong and he's so physical. And again, he's a guy that can play multiple positions. He feels similar to Michael Bennett with a better power rush move. Might not be as impressive on the speed rush, but really strong. I wanted him, so it's a bummer that he's over there. And then Fisk as well. That kid is strong and he's physical. He's in the interior. He's more of your traditional D tackle. He's a little bit bigger. He's not quite the same as Murphy. The kid's so strong. I watched a lot of Florida State games because maybe I had a wager or two on them at different points. So I got to watch those guys a lot. I I really like that draft, and it's just a bummer that it happens for a team in the division. Oh, by the way, they also got Blake Corum, who, if he doesn't get hurt, he's a first-round guy. He got hurt last year, and that kind of helped push him back in the draft. Blake Corum's really good. So it's a bummer that their first 3 picks, it's like, they're good. Those are good picks.
Yeah. Did you see that video of Joe Milton throwing the bomb and then doing the backflip?
Yeah.
The guy,
Yeah. No,
and I saw, him throwing the ball. Did he have the fastest velocity on his throws?
Yeah, dude. He throws an orange 100 yards. They have a video of him at Tennessee throwing an orange 100 yards. Joe Milton, like, I just went on this whole rant about the BC kid that the Lions went out and grabbed. Joe Milton, if he could figure out how to throw it to his team, he would have been the number 1 pick in this draft. He can make all the throws. He's just as fast as Caleb Williams. He's just as electric. He just isn't accurate. If he could figure out how to be accurate, man, that kid would be something special. He also wouldn't shock me if maybe they like move him to another spot just to like get some run on him. I don't know that he's quite got the explosion of like Denard Robinson or a Terrell Pryor. Like, I don't know that you move him to wide receiver and now he's a star in the NFL or a very serviceable player like those two guys. But he's so athletic that, if he can figure it out in any way, or if he can figure it out how to throw to his own teammates, he could be awesome. I'll tell you what, dude, I'm really excited to kind of jump into some of this and break some of this down as the offseason moves on and get a couple of YouTube videos out on maybe the good, the bad, and the ugly of the NFL offseason so far.
Absolutely. What if Joe Milton turns into like the next Taysom Hill?
That would be so funny because it would be so funny because it would be in New England. Like the most old school, like, we want possession wide receivers. We don't need the big splashy guy. Like, that was what Belichick was built on. And it's like the year we get away from him, like, we're going to go duo quarterbacks. We're going to use them both. We're going to find different packages for Milton. He's going to turn into Taysom Hill. That would make me laugh really hard.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it was an awesome draft. A lot of fun names to watch and to look for coming into this next year. Looking forward to your recap videos because you are the football guy. Like, watching those and learning about the game and about these players is a lot of fun. So appreciate all the work that you're putting in on that. If you're watching this, make sure to go follow Will on the In the Trenches podcast across social medias on YouTube, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.